I sold your car. Derek did not even look up from his phone, as he threw a crumpled receipt at my chest. My cards got declined at the caterer an hour ago. The investors were watching, and I needed cash right now to cover the deposit. I stood there, frozen. You sold my Honda? Derek, I pay for that car every month. It is how I get to work. He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. It is titled in my name, remember? Your credit was trash, so I did you a favor. Legally, it is my property. And I liquidated it. He smirked. I barely got enough to cover the champagne. Next time, buy a better car if you want it to matter. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stared at the floor. I looked at him, then at his wife Camille, who was giggling on the sofa. This was not a family. It was a dictatorship. And it was about to fall. It was 2 a.m. Los Angeles was baking under a historic heatwave, the kind that keeps the sidewalks radiating heat well past midnight. But inside the penthouse, the air conditioning was blasting at Arctic levels. I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door banging open against the wall. Derek stood in the doorway. He held a large black garbage bag in one hand. He tossed it onto the floor at the foot of my bed. It landed with a heavy, plastic thud. Get up, he said. His voice was not loud, but it was edged with a manic irritation that I knew well. Camille needs this room. She is doing a closet reveal for her live stream tomorrow. And your junk is ruining the aesthetic. I sat up, blinking against the harsh hallway light. Derek, it is 2 a.m. I do not care what time it is. You are cluttering up my house. He kicked the bag toward me. I packed for you. Consider it a courtesy. Now get out. I looked at the bag. He had not packed. He had shoveled the top layer of my life into a hefty sack like it was yard waste. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, my voice flat. You sold my car. He laughed. A short, sharp sound. Go live in the warehouse. It is empty. At least there you will be with your own kind. Trash. He turned and walked away, leaving the door wide open. I sat there for exactly 10 seconds. A younger version of me would have cried. She would have run after him, begging him to be reasonable, promising to hide my things better, apologizing for existing. But that version of me had evaporated the moment he pawned my keys for champagne. I stood up. I put on my jeans and my boots. I picked up the garbage bag. It was light. Apparently, my value in this house weighed less than 20 pounds. I walked past the master bedroom. I could hear Camille inside, complaining about the lighting for her video. I walked past the kitchen, where my car money had been turned into empty bottles. I walked out the front door and let it click shut behind me. The elevator ride down took forever. When the doors opened to the street, the heat hit me like a physical blow. The air smelled of exhaust and distant wildfire smoke. I hoisted the bag over my shoulder and started walking toward the night bus terminal. It was a 3-mile hike through Santa Monica, past closed boutiques and homeless encampments. With every step, the rhythm of my boots on the pavement beat a new pattern into my brain. I stopped thinking like a sister. I stopped thinking like a victim. I shifted gears into the only mode that had ever kept me safe. Logistics. I began to run a mental audit. Current status. Displaced. Transport. Public transit only. Cash reserves. Minimal. Liability. A toxic partnership that just violated every term of the agreement. In my line of work, when a partner breaches a contract this severely, you do not file a complaint with customer service. You do not ask for a refund. You secure your remaining assets, you cut your losses, and you prepare for a hostile takeover. Derek thought he had thrown me away. He did not realize he had just released me from the only thing holding me back. The bus dropped me off 3 blocks from the industrial district. The pavement was cracked and uneven, radiating heat through the soles of my boots. Even at 3 a.m, the air here tasted like diesel and dust. I stood in front of the warehouse. It was not a building. It was a rotting brick tooth in a mouth full of concrete. The windows were barred, and the for sale sign Derek had put up months ago was peeling off the gate, bleached white by the sun. I unlocked the padlock with the spare key I kept on my ring, the only key I had left. The heavy rolling door groaned as I shoved it up, the sound echoing like a scream in the empty street. Inside, the heat was suffocating. It was hotter than outside, the air thick and stagnant, smelling of old cardboard and neglect. I used my phone flashlight to sweep the room. Piles of actual garbage, broken pallets, and industrial debris littered the floor. I cleared a space in the corner, kicking aside a rusted paint can, and sat down on my trash bag. For the first time in 10 years, I stopped moving. And in the stillness, the math finally caught up to me. I sat there in the dark and replayed the last decade. My name is Andrea. I am 29. And for my entire adult life, I have been the silent partner in a business called Derek's Ego. It started small. When our parents died, Derek took the lead. He was the man. The visionary. The CEO of nothing. He told me I was too young. Too fragile to handle the estate. He said, "I will take the burden. Andrea, you just focus on school." So the deeds went in his name. The accounts went in his name. But the bills came to me. I remembered the winter the heater broke in the penthouse. Derek was in Aspen networking. He called me. Frantic. "We need to fix this, Andrea. It is our home." I paid the $3,000 for the repair. I remembered when the property taxes on this very warehouse were delinquent. He told me, "We are going to lose the family legacy if we do not act." I drained my savings account to pay the county. He loved the word we. We are building an empire. We are in this together. We need to tighten our belts. But tonight, sitting on the dirty concrete, I realized the translation. In a toxic family, we is the most dangerous word in the dictionary. It is a linguistic trap. When there was a debt, it was ours. When there was profit, it was his. When there was work to be done, it was a family obligation. But when it came to ownership, authority, or credit, the we evaporated instantly. He sold my car because he truly believed he had the right. He did not see it as stealing from his sister. He saw it as liquidating an asset that belonged to the corporation of Derek. I was just an employee who had gotten too comfortable thinking she had rights. He kept me poor so I would stay dependent. He kept my credit score low so I could not buy my own place. He engineered my desperation so that living in a warehouse would feel like a mercy, rather than a punishment. I looked around the dark, sweltering space. He called this place a burden. He called it a rot that was dragging down his portfolio. But as I stretched out on the hard floor, using my bag of clothes as a pillow, a strange thought occurred to me. He never came here. Derek was terrified of dirt. He was terrified of manual labor. He treated this place like a radioactive zone, only useful on a balance sheet. He bade not set foot inside these walls in 5 years, which meant he did not know what was in the corners. He did not know what was behind the drywall. He thought he had exiled me to a prison. He did not realize he had just given me sole custody of the only thing he had not ruined yet. 7 days later, the temperature hit 104 degrees. The warehouse was an oven. The air inside shimmered with dust and stagnation. I was sitting on a crate, auditing my remaining cash reserves, when the side door banged open. Derek stormed in. He was wearing a linen suit that probably cost more than my entire education, but right now, it was stained with sweat. He looked out of place, like a peacock in a landfill. He did not say hello. He threw a red envelope at my chest. It hit me and fluttered to the concrete floor. "Pay it," he snapped. I picked it up. Final disconnection notice. Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. The amount due was staggering. $4,000. "You have been squatting here for a week," he said, wiping his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "And you have not even transferred the utilities?" "I got a call from the collection agency today. Fix it, Andrea. I am not paying to keep the lights on in a dump. I haven't used any power, Derek. I am charging my phone with a solar bank. I haven't even turned on a light bulb. I do not care what you are doing. The bill is in the estate's name. That means it is my problem. Transfer it to your name today, or I will have the meter ripped out." He turned on his heel and marched out, desperate to get back to his air-conditioned car. I stood there holding the envelope. My thumb brushed over the usage graph printed on the back. I stopped. I work in logistics. My job isn't just moving boxes. It is analyzing data. I look for inefficiencies. I look for leaks. And when I looked at that graph, my brain instantly flagged an anomaly. The usage line wasn't jagged. In a normal building, power consumption fluctuates. It peaks during the day, drops at night. It spikes when machines turn on. But this line was flat. It was a straight, horizontal line across the entire month. High consumption. Constant draw. 24 hours a day. 7 days a week. That is not lights. That is not a forgotten refrigerator. That is life support. I looked around the empty, silent warehouse. There were no machines running. No humming vents. Just silence and heat. But the meter does not lie. Somewhere in this building, something was eating electricity like a starving animal. I walked to the breaker box on the far wall. It was an old industrial panel, covered in grime. I opened it. Most of the switches were taped off, labeled defunct. But one breaker, labeled Zone 4, was hot to the touch. I followed the conduit. It ran up the wall, across the ceiling trusses, and disappeared behind a stack of rotting plywood sheets leaning against the back corner of the warehouse. I walked over to the plywood. I pulled the first sheet away. It crashed to the floor, kicking up a cloud of dust. Behind it was not brick. It was drywall. Newer drywall. Someone had built a partition, a false wall to shorten the room. I grabbed a crowbar from my tool bag. I jammed it into the seam and pulled. The drywall crumbled. A blast of cold air hit my face. It was freezing. Sterile, conditioned air. And with it came a sound. A low, steady hum that had been muffled by the insulation. I smashed a hole big enough to step through. I wasn't looking at a storage closet. I was looking at a climate-controlled vault. The space was pitch black, illuminated only by the blinking green LEDs of massive industrial dehumidifiers lining the walls. They were the source of the hum. They were the reason for the bill. I raised my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness and hit something that looked like a giant, clear blister. It was a car capsule. An inflatable storage bubble used to preserve high-end vehicles in a vacuum. And there wasn't just one. There were 12. 12 shimmering bubbles lined up in military precision. I walked to the first one. My flashlight beam danced over the curve of a fender. Highland green paint. Fastback roofline. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew that car. Everyone knew that car. It was a 1968 Ford Mustang GT. But it was not just any Mustang. I saw the dent in the rear bumper, the specific, unrepaired damage from a famous chase scene. This was the Bullitt Mustang. I moved to the next bubble. A 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider. Red. The license plate read, nervous. I stumbled back. Derek called this place a burden. He called it a rotting tooth. He threw a disconnection notice at me because he was too cheap to pay the bill. He did not know. He had never looked. He had never checked the meter. He was so blinded by his own arrogance that he had been sitting on top of the holy grail of Hollywood history and treating it like a landfill. I was not standing in a warehouse anymore. I was standing in a bank vault. And I was the only one who knew the combination. I did not call Derek. I did not call the power company. I called Graham. Graham was a freight specialist I had worked with on a nightmare logistics contract 2 years ago involving a shipping container of vintage watches headed for Dubai. He did not ask questions. He just knew what things were worth. He pulled up to the warehouse 40 minutes later in a nondescript sedan. He looked at the peeling paint, the barred windows, and the general decay of the industrial district with a skeptical frown. "You said you had a cargo issue, Andrea," he said, stepping over a puddle of oil near the entrance. "This looks more like a demolition site. It is not about the building, Graham. It is about the inventory." I led him to the false wall. I handed him a flashlight. "Zone 4. I said. "Take a look." He stepped through the hole in the drywall. I heard his breath catch. Then silence. Long, heavy silence. I followed him in. He was standing in front of the Bullitt Mustang, his face inches from the plastic bubble. He was not looking at it like a car. He was looking at it like a religious artifact. "The dent is real," he whispered. "The camera mount welds are still on the rocker panels." He moved to the next bubble. "The red Ferrari. The 1961 California Spider," he murmured. "From Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They said the hero car was destroyed. They said it was crushed." He turned to me, his eyes wide. "It was not crushed. It was hidden." He spent the next 20 minutes moving down the line. He checked VIN plates through the plastic. He inspected tire treads. He was shaking. Actually shaking. Finally, he walked back to me. He took off his glasses and wiped them on his shirt. "Andrea," he said, his voice unsteady. "Do you have any idea what you are standing on?" "I have a guess. I need a number." "Conservative? If you liquidated quickly to a private buyer?" 12 million. My stomach dropped. $12 million. "If we took it to auction?" Graham continued, his voice rising. "If we marketed the Lost Cinema Fleet story? 15 million. Easy. Maybe 20. $15 million. Derek was selling the land for $500,000 to pay off a $200,000 debt. He was throwing away $15 million because he was too lazy to look behind a sheet of plywood. Graham realized the owner thought the vault held hazardous waste. That was the mistake. I played along. The owner, Derek, wanted the warehouse emptied to avoid a $50,000 penalty. I told him I could handle the trash, but only if he signed a document transferring all contents to me for legal protection. Panicked and arrogant, he signed without reading. By morning, the cars were gone. At closing, Derek sold the land for $500,000 and mocked me for hauling junk. I showed him the email from Sotheby's. The Mustang and Ferrari were insured for $15 million. He had signed them over. His lawyer confirmed the contract was binding. Derek had legally defined the contents as waste. He lost everything: money, marriage, reputation, and lawsuits failed. I kept the cars, bought a logistics firm, and reclaimed my parents' old home. Derek chased status. I protected value.